Come explore the depths of consciousness, where we raise the vibes and open minds.
Welcome to the Grounded Galactic Twins Podcast. I'm Allison.
I'm Emily.
And today we're talking about Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti. There's so many other names, but
It's also called Yowie
well, it's called a
in
whole
Aus-
bunch of
in
names.
Australia.
Yeah. But nonetheless, you've heard of it, okay? The abominable snowman.
Abominable.
No, is it abdom or abominable?
Abominable.
That's what I heard as a kid. That's what we heard. That's the first name I ever heard of it when we were kids from some, the little, like the Christmas Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer cartoon, the stop animation or whatever it's called. I think they called it that.
Probably.
The abominable snowman, and then Bigfoot, and then Sasquatch. That's kind of like the words I remember learning it in that order, what you call it.
Yeah. So we're going to give you just a little basics on the history. Sasquatch legends have been around for a long time. Generally, they're thought to live in forested areas, and especially in North America, I read. There's more sightings reported in North America. You may know more. I don't know. Particularly in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah,
A lot of
Canada.
the stories in there.
But also the Ozarks in Arkansas. There have been a lot of sightings in the Ozark area.
And we're going to talk about the Fouke monster in a minute from Fouke, Arkansas. Y'all probably have seen the famous clip of Sasquatch walking through the woods. It's called the Patterson Gimlin film. It's a 10-second clip. This was 1967. And when this clip was released, it was a big deal, right? And it's been being referred to for all these years since.
You need to do an impression. Get up and walk. Walk like it.
Okay. Because I watched
Be the beast.
I watched a short little clip of it earlier today, and it was breaking down all of the movements. Let me see if I can remember. The leg joints, can't see my legs, but they're at right angles. The hand closes as it comes up. Then bones are going to, and they get hard. Wait, and then the turn.
Oh, yeah. Turns and looks, right? That's very good. Good job. It's been a while since I've seen that, so I wouldn't have been able to recreate that.
Yeah, I watched it this morning, and the guy who was talking about it, he was an Australian guy, and he's all into cryptozoology, but he's also done a lot of just studies on animals and humans, movement and anatomy, and so, he's a scientist guy, and so he was breaking down the film and the different movements he saw, and he noticed certain things like when it swings its arm up, its hand closes. But one of the things it noticed, and I read through the comments, like what's different about this guy's thing, his name was Wayne Dowsent, Dowsent. He's got like a 7-minute video on YouTube about this. And one of the things he mentioned that some of these others don't mention when they're looking at this footage is as it's swinging its arms, you can see on the fur, like on its thigh, when its arm is swinging, its hands are hitting the thigh. So the fur looks worn out there. And same thing with swinging of the arms, fur is worn out like here in the elbow pit and on the side. So that's something that he noticed. He's like, this to him was one of the things that made it for sure be a non-human being. Unless I guess it was someone in a costume who really wore out the costume a lot and was constantly swinging and hitting their hand against the side of the costume.
I feel like I've heard a lot of good arguments, though, debunking that it's a fake video. Just because they've estimated its height, how fast it was going, its stride, like humans, unless you're a really tall, really big human, you can't make those movements, really.
It'd be a good deep fake.
From forever ago, yeah. You never know, but everyone's familiar with that. And, of course, there's been lots of sightings, like you said. My big question is, what do you think? Let's pretend. Okay, we're pretending here. Well, I don't have to pretend. The people in the audience, I'm going to ask you to pretend the Sasquatch is real. Okay, I believe it's real. I've had my own personal experiences. We'll talk about a little bit later. But just bear with me, go with me in this episode, pretending as if you believe that Sasquatch is real.
I'll take that audience member position
Okay.
because I'm on the fence about it.
Okay.
Honestly.
So then I pose this question to you from someone who maybe is not quite a believer, but you've heard about it, all your life. What do you think Sasquatch is?
I mean, if I had to make like a logical, educated guess, to me, was a branching off of, it's not a Homo sapien, but it's some type of hominid species. That's what my guess would be. And that it just branched off in our little family tree.
You're saying it is a humanoid being that is terrestrial.
Yes, that would be my best guess.
Okay. I'll tell you what I think it is. But as far as the other ones I've heard, that it's a part of, say, like the earth elemental realm. There's all types of different elementals, and you can put fairies in there and trolls in there and gnomes and, the mythological type creatures. That Sasquatch is just one of those, which gives it almost like is it real or not? It's a version of a human, kind of similar to what you said. There's was a divergence at some point in the evolution, and maybe DNA got spliced and we're both humanoid, we're cousins or something kind of thing. Some people say they're extraterrestrials. And some people say, well, they're just downright animals. The way that we as humans define animals as not very intelligent and maybe vicious, and they're like a bear, basically.
Mm-hmm. I think most people that I know would say that they believe Sasquatch exists, or they really want to believe Sasquatch exists.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I've heard a lot of people say that maybe they believe in Sasquatch. They can't deny all of the reports over decades and decades, but also at the same time, generally those are the same people that think that it's just an animal and that it needs to be hunted, and that let's go find some footprints and some hair and different things like that. And they're not even accounting for the fact that it might be a more intelligent species than us. And that's why, no, we're not going to recover a dead body. No, we're not going to see them. They're not going to go anywhere near us. I mean, what I think's funny about it is you have species to this day that are undiscovered on land, in caves, in the ocean, all over. But for whatever reason, people think that, well, Sasquatch couldn't possibly not have been, like, it must not be real because it's so big, somebody would have seen it by now, kind of thing. Whereas we're still discovering new species every year, right?
I mean, yeah, if you're deep in like the Amazon rainforest or
caves,
in the bottom of the ocean, sure. I think though, such a large mammal, to me, it's like, okay, there should be some kind of bones or fossils somewhere. I mean, there have been research that's done on different hair samples from all over the world, and there's a study I wanted to mention from Sykes et al. I think this is 2014. And they took 30 different hair samples from all over the world. And 28 of those were found to come back as some animal, a bear or a wolf or whatever. 2 of them from the Himalayas were sort of unknown. So they determined it to be basically either some type of unknown bear, which is a large animal we wouldn't know about, right? Or like a hybrid bear species of some kind. So
interesting.
it was interesting. All the other research I did to try to find some empirical connection to this, it was basically all determined to, not be credible evidence.
I mean, the argument about why we've never found a body, why we've never found bones, you think about it with the whole alien thing too. People say, well, we don't have a body. And other people go, yes, we do. They're just in military bases or whatever. Yes, there are bodies. There's been a cover up of that. So you could say the same thing about Sasquatch. I bet there have been bodies and there's been a cover up or something like that. I believe too, though, that one, they're highly intelligent. They are ancient. They've been around since way before humans. That's just what I believe. And that they've had a lot more experience and a lot more connection with Earth, and they have, various psychic capabilities. So they can work between the dimensions, and they can slipwalk. That's their term. Slipwalk. That's kind of like when they phase in and out. So people will see, like, you'll have a video of, I don't know if I could find it or whatever, but I saw a video circulating a couple years back of, I think it was somebody in just like a single propeller plane or something. that was going over a completely remote, way up north area, probably in Canada. I don't remember exactly all the details of geographically where this was, but it was like there's no human getting out of this area at all. And you could see this, it's like a dark figure walking in this. I mean, no one could ever get there. And it's walking on two legs. It's clearly not a bear. There's no clothing on it. And then it just kind of disappears. So where'd it go? Where did it go? So I believe they're interdimensional, and that's why we're not seeing them. They don't really want to interact with us. And I think they use the cave systems too, which is, we got the Ozarks. And then, think about all the cave systems like in West Virginia and those mountains. There's all kinds of stuff there, that legends that you've heard about, all kinds of different strange and paranormal things and, creatures and stuff. So,
well, obviously, if they are living here on Earth, whether or not they're interdimensional, they're finding environments, well, one, they can sustain themselves with, but also places that are remote, like you said. So, like even swamps. So the Fouke monster in Fouke, Arkansas, this is in a forested and swampy area. It's in southwest Arkansas, sort of south of Texarkana. It's near the border of Louisiana and Texas down there. And in 1972, there was a film, a docudrama called Boggy Creek.
The Legend of
Boggy Creek. I don't want to fudge the name. It was 1972, and the whole inspiration for the film was these alleged, it said that a lot in my research, alleged encounters that people had with this Fouke monster. It seemed to portray it, though, as something that was like a danger. So there was some rumors about the Fouke monster had entered a home and was trying to attack people living there. People were scared of that, and this hysteria kind of took root, and that was the main sort of reason for the film. There was also alleged incidents where farmers were reporting their livestock had been killed, in strange ways and with no explanation. So the Fouke monster is kind of worldwide famous, really, for people, especially in the Sasquatch loving world. We've never been to. Have you been to Fouke?
No.
I see your little earring there. He's sideways. He looked like he's laying down.
Is that better? Did I put him there?
Yeah, that'll work.
I have my Sasquatch earrings on today.
Do you have earrings for every single?
Take a picture. Take a picture of me, and then I'll put it on the video so they can see. Because obviously you can't see it from here because it's small. But no, I don't have a pair of earrings for everything. I've got ETs and ghosts and Sasquatch, but I don't have fairies, and mermaids and stuff, unicorns, nothing like that.
Sounds like
need to get some more.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, let's go back to the very first thing you said is let's talk about the history of. And let me tell you a little bit about from Sasquatch themselves perspective. And I talked about this actually when we did the 10 questions that haunt us episode. We talked a little bit about Sasquatch, and I referred 3 different YouTube videos. It's like a series called Sasquatch Speaks, part 1, 2, and 3. And I remember watching that like a while back. And there were several people in there that, their stories were wonderful. These are such wonderful documentaries. And so I looked up some of the people in the documentaries, and several of them have like written books and done different things. And so I've read several of them. There's a few in particular that I want to talk about, and it's all channeled material. It's not the traditional way you think of channeling as the other being isn't physically there. This channeling is the Sasquatch being is physically there and within physical proximity of the person a lot of times, not all the time. Some of it's telepathic, but they're not just speaking English to them. There's still a telepathic communication, even if they're sitting side of across from each other.
Is this channeling happening out in the woods?
Yes. In designated areas that, these people are drawn to or whatever. But there's a series of books called Sasquatch Message to Humanity, and it comes in 3 parts. And it's channeled by Sun Bao. We talked about him previously as well. And I'll link an interview that he did with Regina Meredith. I don't know if anyone in the audience is familiar with her on Gaia. She has a wonderful interview program that's pretty popular on Gaia. She interviewed him. And anyway, just so you can have an introduction to him. But I haven't read book 3 yet. I'm about halfway through book 2. But the first book goes a lot into the history of Earth. And it's wild. And it's really similar to probably things that you've heard from ET channelers as well. It talks about these intergalactic wars. It talks about how the Earth has been inhabited by beings, then destroyed, inhabited by beings, then destroyed. The Earth goes through cycles and things like that. Civilizations collapse and everything has to be built up again. It talks about there's been ant people and fish people and bird people and lemur people and then the Sasquatch people. And then here comes the human people. But the Sasquatch people have been around a really, really long time. And the message is so positive. They're trying to help humans, but also at the same time, they see us just destroying the Earth. And they're here as protectors of the Earth. That's like their main priority. So they're not going to let us destroy it as much as they can, but they also, like, we're dangerous to them.
How do they keep us from destroying it?
I don't remember exactly what it was saying in the book specifically about, okay, what are the things that they do, but they have had ambassador relationships, if you will, with humans over time, just like ETs do. So there are people in positions of power or that have some type of influence that can designate a national park or whatever. I'm just giving an example, to stay out of areas, things like that. There's only so much they can do because as it explains in, I don't know if it's book 1 or 2, that once humans got more weapons and more capabilities to travel easier around the world and around the country, that there was this genocide against the Sasquatch. And because they're more intelligent, they're stronger, much bigger and stronger. And they have these intuitive psychic type abilities that we don't have, or that the powers that be didn't want the normal human to know that they have, because we do have these abilities too, but like it's been washed out of us over time. Just like you believe in Atlantis, we had all these great scientific achievements, but where are those records? Like we've done all kinds of things as a humanity, and then the slate gets swiped clean, the great deluge. But anyway, so it's super interesting about the Earth history and kind of like why they're here and how they interact with us.
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, okay, in the Noah's Ark situation, or when there's a deluge, or when there's this like catastrophic, a huge comet hits the planet. So has Sasquatch only been here since that last event, or did they somehow survive some of these big events?
I don't know that it talked about that specifically, but they have been around for millennia. They take advantage of the interdimensional portals. They take advantage of the cave systems. Some of them live off-world in ships, say, that are hovering around. It explained in one of the books that they don't, because of the fact that they don't want to abandon the Earth. They do want to stay here, but that they have to be careful about keeping themselves safe and out of sight. They don't procreate very often. So for one of them to have a child is very, very rare. So their population is almost extinct, if you want to call it that, for those that are still left here. But that there are some still left here trying to help us and trying to help the Earth. And, they do reach out to humans who they feel are. So Sunbow is one of them. Kelly Rainbow Butterfly is another one that you can look up.
Oh, Kelly Rainbow.
And I actually met her. She does an annual Sasquatch conference. She usually does it in Washington, but she's originally from Arkansas. And so she did one in Arkansas a few years back. Me and the hubby went, and it was a beautiful experience. Absolutely beautiful experience. And there's also been a prevalence. You can find people that have reported sightings of Sasquatch and gray ETs at the same time. Or they will like see a ship and then on the ground they see a Sasquatch or something. There's some type of like overlap between the gray hybridization program and the Sasquatch. Sometimes their sightings are together. So I don't exactly know quite what the connection is. I've heard different things. But there's some like, with the human hybridization program that they have some interest together.
Is it possible we all started out as like a Sasquatch-like being, and then we were genetically engineered to be more we are now?
Well, that's exactly what an ancient alien researcher would say. Several ET channelers have said that there were, Sasquatch beings were here a long time ago and evolved on Earth. And then at some point, the Anunnaki came to Earth and messed with the DNA basically and was doing DNA experiments. So humans were a byproduct of that. And then the original Sasquatch branch of beings continued on, but then, we branched off from them.
So you do believe that's the theory that you believe?
Yeah, I do.
It just makes me think, like, in your example or in your explanation, the Anunnaki, are they just doing like DNA manipulation, or are they trying to, you said you're using the term hybridization. So is it a hybrid between their race and their species and like the Sasquatch species, and that birthed the human?
So the way that I understand it is that Earth has always been a grand experiment, and it's more about the Earth at first, but not so much the being. Earth was created, if you will, as a grand experiment. And over eons and eons and eons of time, Earth's going through cycles. It's not ready for like 3D life yet, but there was interdimensional life here, back when it was like lava, nothing but lava, basically. But eventually they wanted Earth to be a paradise planet where there eventually were beings with a mix of DNA from all of the sort of nearby galactic races, not like the entire multiverse, as far as I understand it. And this is what I have heard, like the Pleiadians, Arcturians, the Sirians, the Lyrians wanted to basically make a more advanced race with all of their various DNA to get the best parts of all of them.
Man, I think they may have failed.
Well, the Anunnaki
We're not taking care of our planet.
They weren't doing it correctly or appropriately and didn't have, so it started to turn into something that it wasn't supposed to be. And they started taking advantage and all this type of stuff. So then they were forced to leave planet, and then humans were kind of left on their own for a while. And the Sasquatch was still here interacting with us in the early days, but then we started to kill them and try to eliminate them around about the same time that it moved from a matriarchy to a patriarchy. And there was a shift in power on the planet that, man needed to be the top dog, the man, not just humans, but men needed to be the top dogs. That's kind of when all that started. And of course, that's way before there were newspapers and social media. We can maybe find things like that carried through generations, just verbal stories or whatever, but there's not going to be much written about that.
So as a skeptic, as I am, as I was doing my research for this episode, I wanted to try to find some stories that I thought were like most compelling to me or logical or reasonable. There are a couple I came across. There's an interesting podcast called Sasquatch Theory, and this guy has sort of dedicated his life to going around and collecting stories from people and investigating particular places where they're having sightings. And there were two on there that caught my eye. One is kind of a short story, and this was a retired sheriff. So this was in 1988 in Mark Twain National Forest in Missouri. It was 2 or 3 in the morning. He was driving on a kind of isolated road at night, of course, and he catches this glimpse of this large, furry, black being. He estimated it to be about 8 feet tall, and it scared the crap out of him. He got out of his car and he shined his flashlight, and he could kind of get a better look at it, but it was still in the distance. And he said as soon as you shine the light, it scurried off. He's a hunter. He's seen bears on 2 legs. He's seen all the animals, and this was definitely something that he thought he'd never seen, and it scared the bejesus out of him. It was a very short encounter. He didn't really talk about it while he was still serving the county, and then after he retired, he told the story full. Whether it was Sasquatch or not, it made him think it was something unknown.
And that he didn't feel comfortable telling people about while he was still in his post, because they'd be like, you were dreaming,
Yeah. So that was an interesting one because it came from, in my view, someone of authority, right? The other one was a much longer story, very interesting, although I have my skepticisms about it. I'll tell you at the end. But so it was about a student. His name was Daniel. He was a graduate student. This was in Idaho, and he was doing some work with the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, allegedly. Okay. It was him and 2 others who were part of that state agency were going out and taking samples of streams and just doing some sampling in the area. It was a very remote area in Idaho, certainly a very undeveloped, and they were going out there and camping for 3 or 4 nights to collect all these samples. And his first encounter was he noticed he went to go pick some berries at this berry patch, and he noticed these footprints that to him just looked wild. They didn't look like bear prints. He said they looked more like human footprints, but they were very long and very wide, especially. Of course, I'm thinking, why didn't you take pictures? There doesn't seem to be any evidence that he collected any of these stories, but he's recounting he saw these strange footprints. Okay, that was the first thing. Then later on, one of the guys he was with, I think his name was Ramus, he was out in the forest doing something, and he saw some type of creature like crouching and trying to hide behind a tree. And it scared the bejesus out of him. So he's screaming. He runs back to camp. Yes, the bejesus. He's trying to explain what happened. And of course, the guy Daniel, who had seen the tracks, was like, oh gosh, this creature must have left these tracks. The other guy that was with them was kind of like super skeptical and kind of angry about the whole thing. So that kind of comes out later because he ends up shooting into the forest. So there was that incident. And then that night, the Remus guy was saying that he heard someone walking all night. He thought it was Daniel. Daniel's like, no, I never left my tent. And when they got up, a bunch of their cooking and dishes were just strewn everywhere, but many of them were like yards away. So like if a raccoon or a bear comes through, they're going to rife around in your camp area. Most everything's going to be right there. But they found some stuff that was several hundred yards away. And in fact, they had a missing cooler that they found like a mile away. And this cooler had supposedly been ripped in half with no claw marks, no teeth marks, nothing like that. And seemingly and I'm guessing it was like a styrofoam cooler, maybe. It wasn't specified, but I'm thinking, how would even a beast rip open some type of plastic cooler? But it must have been styrofoam. I don't know. And then that night, one of the nights they were there, they had woke up because one of the tents had collapsed on somebody. And so they came out of the tent, and it's like it had been disassembled. And so the two guys were kind of freaked out about it, Daniel and Remus. They were just really like, oh gosh, what is happening here? And the other guy that was with them, I forget his name, but he was pissed off about it. He was angry for some reason. Like, I guess he thought other people in the woods were maybe messing with him. So he went out firing indiscriminately into the woods. And it was a big to-do. So then, after their 3 or 4 days out in the woods, they go back to their supervisor at the state agency, and they're telling him what all happened. And supposedly he's like, oh yeah, well, about every 3 or so years, we get our state agents that are out here doing this work reporting these type of things. But then their supervisor got really stern with them and was like, you can never talk about this. You will be fired immediately. Don't tell anybody about this. I don't really know the timing of when Daniel was the one who was being interviewed on this podcast. So this was some years past when he was doing his work as a student with the state agency. I thought that was really compelling. One, because again, it's kind of tied to this credible state agency organization. But also I'm like, the first time I'm going to go to the berry patch and see that there's a footprint, surely they had some kind of cameras with them. This didn't happen all that long ago. I would think they'd have a cell phone with a camera to take some photos.
They were sworn to secrecy.
Yeah, but you still could have collected evidence, and then he told his story later on, so why couldn't he also take some photos and save it for later to say, hey, look, here's the footprint.
Maybe there was an NDA and that was part of it. That way people can't say exactly that. You don't have any evidence, but they okay, you can go tell your story, but no one's going to believe you because you don't have any evidence of anything.
Maybe. That's plausible. I thought that was really intriguing. So there was another bit to that story with the student and the state officials. So one of the nights that they were out there, they're hearing these loud whooping sounds like the whole night. And of course, again, they're all hunters and outdoor people, and they've never heard such a sound. One of the guys said it sounded like an 8 or a gibbon was, I think, the closest thing that they could think of that sounded like that. What you doing?
I'm taking my hearing picture.
Yeah. So when they said it just happened like for several hours and very loud. So to them, it was like communicating with each other, probably trying to warn that, hey, there's some humans in the woods.
Stinky humans.
Yeah, stinky humans.
So some of our audience members may be familiar with Darryl Anka, who channels Bashar. We've talked about him several times. And he does a monthly transmission, and I've had an opportunity a couple different times to ask him questions during those transmissions. And I have always been interested in Sasquatch, so I knew I wanted to get an opportunity to ask him about it because he hasn't been asked just a ton of questions about Sasquatch over the years, at least that I've seen, and I've seen a lot of his content. So I was curious the most about what he could tell me about the Sasquatch connection with the Ozarks, because that's where we're closest to. And I've heard a ton of stories from like the Eureka Springs area. All those people up there believe in Sasquatch. It's not a question in their mind. You know what I'm saying? Like either they've had an experience or they know someone personally that's had an experience or a family member from 2 generations back. You know, everybody has a story. I don't know if I have the video, but I'll try to find like the audio clip and make sure that I'm within their copyright stuff so that I can play at least a part of it for this. But I asked him like, what's the connection? And essentially his answer was that the Ozarks have, and this is not at all surprising, but the Ozarks have how did he say it? He compared it to Swiss cheese as far as the number of interdimensional portals there. And not only, obviously, there's just a lot of caves, but that area, there's a lot of ley lines. If you look at ley line maps, there's a lot of intersection there. The crystal vortex is there. And what I mean by the crystal vortex is people call Sedona a vortex area, Shasta is a vortex area, Maui is a vortex area, whatever. There's a crystal vortex that kind of starts from like, I'll put a map of it on here so you can see, but like Little Rock is kind of like a corner, and then it goes over into Oklahoma, and then it goes up into Missouri. So that's sort of like edge of the state of Arkansas, and then up north is the crystal vortex because of the quartz crystal that we've got. Arkansas has the largest deposit of continuous quartz crystal in the world. Brazil has the most crystal quartz, but it's not an unbroken vein.
Arkansas is so special.
We are the natural state, okay? So I believe that's probably one of the reasons why there's a lot of portals here. But anyway, so yeah, he said there's like a Swiss cheese network of portals that they can use. And so they're kind of coming and going and coming and going and coming and going.
My first question is regarding the crystal vortex in Arkansas in the Ozark Mountain area. Can you expand a little bit on the Sasquatch connections in that area?
That particular vortex has a link interdimensionally, one of them anyway, to the place, the dimension that the Sasquatch often go to remove themselves from your reality. The Ozark area is particularly strong as an interdimensional connection to a few very specific kinds of alternate or parallel realities that the Sasquatch take advantage of to remove themselves from what you consider to be your typical reality. There are sort of a network of tunnels in space-time there that can be traversed by those who know how to do so. There are many comings and goings interdimensionally in that area, sort of very much like a Swiss cheese vortex, so to speak.
And I asked him, okay, well, what can I do if I wanted to personally reach out to the Sasquatch? You know, give me some tips. And he specifically told me to go to a mountainous area, try to go to a remote area, and just be in nature, heart-centered, and call upon a being, a female Sasquatch called Tsemiquis. Yeah. Guess from his perspective, she's like a willing ambassador that will, because he's actually mentioned her before in someone that asked about Sasquatch in the Pacific Northwest area. So she must be using these portals to get back and forth. Whatever.
Like teleportation.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like a wormhole, you know, a tesseract. Wrinkle in Time. The Wrinkle. My favorite book ever, Wrinkle in Time. Yeah,
So-
so it's like a bend in space time, wormhole, portal, whatever.
Have you ever gone out into the woods and tried to?
Yes,
Hmm.
of course I have. Of course I have. I've gone to Pettit Jean. I've gone to Mount Nebo. I've gone to Queen Wilhelmina State Park. There was a time when I went to Pettit Jean. Was it Pettit Jean? It may have been Mount Nebo. Anyway, whatever. We went on a trail that I hadn't been on in years and years and years. But it's best to do it like with your back leaning against a tree, and maybe there's a little stream running by, just like nature sounds. You want nature sounds. You don't want to hear cars. You don't want to see people, And I just had my back against a tree, and there was a stream in front of us. And it was like a time of year where we were like the only ones out there. I did this meditation, just like not really even calling them in, but sending them love. I was just sending them love, telling them, it's kind of like a CE5, but for Sasquatch. So CE5 is the close encounter protocol. Close encounters are the first kind, second kind, third kind. You've heard that. For extraterrestrial, CE5s are, the alien. You're not seeing the aliens. You're not being abducted by aliens. You're not seeing a ship in the sky. You're initiating the contact is what a CE5 is. So you can apply that to Sasquatch too.
I never knew what CE stood for.
Oh, my close encounter.
That makes sense.
That was developed by J. Allen Hynek. And then Stephen Greer really, a lot of people associate CE5 with Stephen Greer, but he didn't develop the CE scale. Anyway, so I did kind of like a CE5, but for Sasquatch. And this was in the middle of the day, and my husband's like just a few feet from me. I remember by the end of that meditation that how when you're like in your house by yourself and it feels like there's somebody with you, that someone's watching you, or you're like, who's there? And like there's nobody there. Like you feel a presence in the room, or when someone walks up behind you, even if you don't hear them, because you just feel it, like you feel it. So that's what it felt like. It felt like I just had them around me. And I felt their spirit. I felt their soul. It was very beautiful.
I'm curious if some would like give the advice of, if you go out and do that, maybe make sure that you're being as natural as possible. Don't wash your hair with smelly shampoo. Don't spray yourself with perfume. I would think that they have very strong smellers and noses and can smell you from miles away, probably.
And well, maybe, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know that I've ever heard anybody say or suggest that, I guess. I've always had really positive. I'll tell you about a couple other experiences that I've had. So I started writing a children's book several years ago about a Sasquatch, a young Sasquatch. And hopefully, I don't know, maybe one day I'll actually make it into a book. I was doing a lot of research. I was reading a lot of books and watching a lot of videos and just trying to understand, like, not from the people who think Sasquatch is an animal, but like, what really is the essence of Sasquatch? What do they think about themselves? Where are they really from? What can they really do? So I can write a story that's like accurate from that perspective. And so I was thinking, right, as accurate as I can get. So I was just thinking about Sasquatch a lot and, meditating on them a lot. And I remember one night I was laying in bed and I was like reaching out to Samaquest in my mind. And this was like, I don't know, probably 10, 11 at night. Everyone in the house was asleep. It was quiet or whatever. And I heard something running on our roof, like human footstep type thing, not just like a little squirrel or whatever. It was like running over my head, basically. But I also have had some dreams and some astral experiences. So one night I was practicing my astral projection, and I went into it with the intention of, I want to interact with a Sasquatch. So as I'm coming out of my body, and I'm going through my bedroom, I'm going out the laundry room door, I'm going into my backyard. That's kind of where I had set the intention that I would meet this being, is outside in the backyard. And so I go out there and I don't see anything yet other than the yard. And there's a table there. And then I didn't even have to turn around, but like I could feel that it was sitting at the table. So I turned, and as soon as I turned around to look at it, I got a good look at it. And it was probably, it was pretty tall. I couldn't tell you honestly if it was actually sitting in the table or not, because when I turned around and looked at it, there was such a huge electrical vibration feeling that I felt that my vision was jumping. It was kind of like everything, like the being was static electricity, kind of thing. And so it was like I couldn't see like facial features or whatever, but you can see the silhouette and the hair and the shape and all that. And you can just feel. And like I felt it was a male. I felt it was ancient. I felt that it had, basically agreed to meet with me, but I couldn't handle its vibration. So as soon as I got a look at it, I was immediately back in my body. Like I couldn't hold that vibration in the same space, even on the astral plane. And that's another reason why I think that we're not really just going to run into them out in the woods, because we're on such a different vibrational level that we can't perceive them. It's kind of like we don't have, what's the name of the spectrum of things that we can see on? Like we don't have night vision like some bugs do and animals, like they can see lots of other things. So it's kind of like we're not vibrating on the same level.
Well, then how do you account for all of the sightings over the years?
Well, I mean,
These are
same thing.
accidents. Maybe they're not
Maybe.
maybe they're sick, maybe they're tired, maybe there's something in them.
I mean,
for their vibration.
that's it's totally case by case. I would say the same thing about an ET, that they're at a much higher vibration, and yet I've had in-person experiences with ETs. So it just depends on the person. We talked about this, where there's a group of people and this person sees this and that person doesn't, and then that person does, and they're all there together.
Well, it could still be a hallucination situation.
Okay. I'm just saying, telling you my experience.
I mean, I get what you say.
Yeah. And I had one, I've had a few dreams or whatever, but I'll tell you one. I had a dream that me and my family, and we were at home, and this was probably 5 or 6 years back. I had this dream, and we were watching a movie, and something called me to go outside. So I went out the front door, and I look around the corner, and there was a female Sasquatch who had hair like the color of ours, very bright, sort of red. And she was hunched over, like sitting down by a tree, and just looked really sad. And so I walked up to her, and I don't remember why she was sad. I don't remember. But anyway, she was there for me. She wanted to introduce me to other beings, but she needed my family to be with me. So we walked around the back side of the house. We got to the porch. I opened the door and I said, "Hey, come here, husband, come here, kids, come outside, here, there's a Sasquatch," kind of thing. So we all come out on the deck, and we're looking up in the sky, and we see these 3 white beings that, white skin, white, like pure white hair, white clothes, coming down from the sky. And there was 2 females and a male, and just sort of landing in front of us. And they looked human, other than it was like paper white skin and everything was white about them. But she was basically making an introduction. And it felt so real. It didn't feel like a dream. And then I woke up, and I was very sad, because they were telling, I remember these white beings were telling us things, but I couldn't remember any of it by the time I woke up. And that is frustrating, because I'm like, was that a fort?
You'll have to try to get your brain back there in a dream another time.
Yes. I don't know. Crazy.
I did have a dream one time about a Sasquatch. It's a short dream, but I was at Woolly Hollow State Park, which is one of our stomping grounds when we were kids. And in the dream, there was this like creature there, but everyone was scared of it. And so it was kind of hiding because it was afraid it was going to be killed. It was a little rough around the edges. So it definitely had I could see why people were scared of it. It was very gruffy, making noises all the time. I just had this sense in this dream that it was my job to sort of help this being and to protect this being. So I was a little scared of it, but I still walked up to it, and apparently it had been accused of all these murder type crimes. And so people were like running like they're going to get murdered. I wasn't worried about that. So I went up and gave it a hug and was trying to accept it. It was very tall, and it was like hugging a big bear, which was kind of nice.
Oh.
And I just remember trying to figure out, like, how do I now integrate you into society? And so people will accept you, and that you're not a murderous monster. And you're just a hairy being out here. And I remember like going into the campground and stealing some human clothes out of someone's tent, trying to like dress it up like a human, put a hat on it and a red t-shirt on it and some shorts. And then we went and sat down at a picnic table, and I was just trying to normalize this. I'm sure the whole interpretation is I'm trying to tame my own inner monster. Who knows? But it was a very interesting dream that I will not soon forget.
Do you remember the movie when we were kids, Harry and the Hendersons?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, love that movie. And I don't know if you remember the ending of it, but and we watched this with the kids a couple years back. I think we even have it on DVD probably, but anyway, so at the end of it, they're dropping him off in the woods, right? And he's walking into the woods and everyone's looking at the same thing, right? You see the trees, you see the bushes, you see the grass, you see Harry walking away. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you see that bush and that tree turned into, basically, they stood up or they turned into a Sasquatch. To me, that's kind of like a perfect example. I'm so glad they did that in that movie. It's a perfect example of it's right in front of you, but you can't see it. You're not ready to see it. You're not going to see it until they want you to see it.
Or they're expertly camouflaged.
Yeah.
Right.
So I just love that. Now I'm going to have to watch that later.
That's
I
a
love
good
it.
one.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they'll have stories, even like people in Arkansas have stories about them being vicious, and they are animals, and they wake up and there's claw marks outside their house or whatever. I don't remember if I heard it from the Sasquatch Speaks documentary or if it was somewhere else, but I heard this story of a family. I don't know where they lived, but anyway, they basically had a large pond and they drained their pond for whatever reason. And beginning that very night, they started having like vicious banging on their doors, and they would wake up and there'd be huge claw marks and things like that, and just all kinds of noises happening outside. And of course, they're really freaked out, obviously. And it happened like 3-4 nights in a row or something. And they lived in an area where people believed in Sasquatch. So they had a feeling that that's what it was. But they didn't know how to deal with it because they'd never had any direct interaction. So they called upon somebody who they knew could help them with this. Think of it like someone comes and does an exorcism, or somebody comes and, the ghost hunter type person. So they found this Sasquatch equivalent to see if they could figure out, what did we do to piss off this Sasquatch? What can we do because we're afraid it's going to come in our house? Basically what they found is that under the pond, there was this like pretty vast cave system. What happened is after the people drained the pond, they found the cave system and went in there and mucked it all up and found like trinkets and little things that Sasquatch had created and things like that from sticks or rocks or whatever that upon looking at it, you don't really necessarily know what it is. But they thought it was interesting enough that they took it out of the cave and brought it inside their house. So this Sasquatch expert was like, you just basically ruined their home. That's what you did to piss them off. So that day they took and put everything back in there. And I don't remember if they refilled the pond or not. I think they probably did, but then it stopped. No more clawing on the house and banging on the door, and everyone was living peaceful. So I thought that was a super interesting story. Yeah.
You want to talk about your painting?
Oh my gosh, you have to see this. There's a guy that I follow on social media. I found him because he does hidden Sasquatch artwork and hidden other things, but mostly Sasquatch. His name is Timothy Wayne Williams, and he's got a coffee table book of his paintings, and there's a little hidden Sasquatch in them. So I'm like, I want one of his paintings. So I got this one. And I will like take a much better close-up picture of actually,
you're going to have to just take a photo of it, I think.
Okay, anyway. I'll take a photo of it and show you, and I'll hold it up here while I'm talking about it. He usually will say like, oh, here's my painting. It's got 1 hidden or 2 hidden or 3 hidden. And so when I ordered this one, I was like, okay, there's 1 hidden in here. When I got it, I was like, oh, I can't wait to find it. I immediately found it. And then I put it in my bedroom on our top shelf with this little guy and my pyramid here and some other, woo-woo things. And I love it. I love it. I love it. And then my kiddo came down to our bedroom the other day, and I was like, oh, I haven't shown you this. Look, ooh, there's a surprise in it. Because I was just curious if they could find it, without even telling them what was in there. What's the hidden Easter egg? And they looked at it and they go, oh, there's a Sasquatch. And I'm like, uh-huh. And they pointed at it. And it was like in a spot that I hadn't found. I was like over the moon freaking out about it. And they were like, are you okay? I was like, this whole time, I only thought there was the one Sasquatch. And then not 2 seconds later, they go, oh, where's another one?
I can't see it very easily.
I lost my shit.
Let me see if I can.
Okay, see if you can find them.
Just see trees. I see path. I see grass. I see water. Oh, I see this one here up against the leaning tree.
Don't tell people where it's at.
Okay, well, okay, I see that one there. That's the only one that really jumps out.
There's two more. There's two
More.
Yeah, and the kiddo found them easily.
Okay, well, you have to show me where they are when we're done.
Okay. But anyway, I remember I messaged the artist and I'm like, oh, gee, this is like the best thing ever, you know. So please support him. He's a great artist. His paintings are, especially when they're one of a kind. These aren't prints. I mean, this is one of a kind. Anyway, I love the Sasquatch, and I hope one day that I will get to meet a Sasquatch and commune with it.
I will say that I had a former friend of mine. She was very interested in all of this stuff too, and definitely a believer in Sasquatch. And she lived down near the Hot Springs area. So she invited me down one time to go and sort of sit in the forest and try to meditate and call upon the Sasquatch. So we went down and we drove around until we found a really remote area. And it was like, I'm sure we were probably trespassing. We drove down this gravel road and we just kept driving. And then it just sort of opened up to, we're at a river now. And we were at the riverbed. So we parked and we got out and we walked and we crossed the river, and it was kind of up a side of a hill, and we walked about halfway up. And I remember it was raining that day, kind of off and on. So we had our rain gear on, and I remember thinking, we're making way too much noise. So we get there and we just sit. We didn't sit next to each other. We kind of sat maybe 10 yards apart, and we just got really quiet and we were meditating, and we were out there for maybe an hour. And we did hear some things that we thought maybe that's a sound we were a little sus of. I could say sus. But we didn't ever see anything. We didn't hear any whoops, and the classic whoop sound that you might hear. I think we did hear some knocking, and that's been something that has been talked about before, but it was a fun experience. It's something I'd definitely do it again. I'd love to go down to Fouke, and because there's a national forest down there. It's a wildlife management area, sorry. And it's very swampy, very forested. I pulled it up on Google Earth earlier today. It looks very untouched by humans in this particular area. So that would be a good one to go check out sometime.
For sure.
Yeah.
Dope. Love it.
What do you think Sasquatch would say about our episode today?
I think Sasquatch people would be happy that we're keeping it alive in the mainstream, and that we're not just talking about hunting it down and waiting for there to be hair and footprints or a dead body that we can recover, that we're talking a little bit more about it in a broad sense, like they're sentient beings. But
you know what I think they'd say? You know what I'm going to say, right?
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Oh my gosh. Okay, so they can make sounds, obviously.
I'm just saying. I think that's what they'd say.
They're That's their main mode of communication. And the knocking that people
Why
hear.
would they need to like flex this if there's something in the area, whether it's a human or a bear, some type of predator or some intrusive something? Why would they need to whoop?
Maybe they want the people there to know that they're there.
Or to scare off.
And people say they've heard knocking and it sounds like a tree trunk knocking against another tree trunk or something, or a large limb. But I've heard recently that actually when you hear that, it's them actually stomping on the ground. And that's another way to communicate with each other, like elephants do. They use stomps and the vibration and the thud, whatever, kind of like the whale sounds. They sound the same to us, but they don't sound the same to them. So, but it's actually their, foot stomping on the ground. So, what? Oh, one more thing that we didn't talk about. So Rh negative blood. You just go Google it. Scientists do not know. Geneticists, they don't know why or the origin of the percentage of the population that has Rh negative blood. I believe is, I want to say 1 in every 5. It's not super rare or whatever. It's like 20-ish% of the population. Okay. So when I say Rh negative, if you have a blood type that's got a negative, A negative, B negative, O negative, AB negative, that means that you don't have the rhesus factor from the rhesus monkey. So they can trace back all of the positive, Rh positive bloodlines to the rhesus monkey, but that there's 20% of the population that don't have that factor and they don't know where it came from. So, of course, there's all kinds of speculation. It came from off-world. It came from this. It came from that. I've heard some people say it's the Sasquatch line, but to me, that doesn't even make sense.
Right.
I would think it was an off-world.
Well, and you would
know.
think that those that have the plus bloodline that would be more prevalent, that would be related to potential.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I think. So I don't think Rh negative has any Sasquatch overlap, but I just wanted to mention it because some people think that it does, or who knows? Because, you know, the evolution of humans is everyone's got their own opinion about it, and that's just my 2 cents. So didn't want to leave that out.
Fun episode.
So fun.
Mhm.
So reach out to Semiquist and go in with good intentions and a positive heart. She ain't gonna come visit you if you're over here like, I just want to see you and snap a picture of you and put you on my social media. She ain't gonna show up. They can feel your intention. They can feel your heart. They know what's going on. They're not gonna waste their time on that.
Okay, so one thing you also need to do, besides telling us, do you think Sasquatch is real? Have you had any experiences? What have you heard? What are the legends in your family? We also want you to like and subscribe and share and comment all the things that you do
Follow.
on social media.
Yeah.
Yep.
Word.
Great. Bye now.
Bye.